Hey nerds, what's up? Today we're going to talk about the often negative association we give nostalgia when it comes to our favorite books, weaponizing it to excuse our current love for books we've read in the past. This excuse usually comes from a desire to negate any possible criticism that could be leveled at our books over the years in case we've missed flaws during our readings. See after the jump. Nostalgia is dictionary defined as a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past, typically for a period or place with happy personal associations. Now, nostalgia in and of itself isn't a negative thing, and in fact, we usually don't put negative associations with it when it's just mentioned in passing, like, oh man, that thing over there, that gives me such nostalgia for this certain time in my life. But recently, and often in the book community, nostalgia takes on a very different tone and is usually negative. But recently, nostalgia can take on a completely different tone. There are many people, myself included, who have been scorning the rise of 90s remakes and reboots that have been particularly plaguing the TV, media, and film communities. As one writer put it, nostalgia can be dangerous because it replaces the complexity and nuance of lived experience with a consumer-friendly product for mass consumption. We're all kind of feeling like, if you need new ideas, I've got lots of them for you. So I do think this rise in millennial nostalgia bait has made us justifiably wary of the things that we've loved from our past and has made us rethink some of our loves to make sure that we are critically thinking about them and it is not just our nostalgic love for these past things that are giving them a pass. Now, within the book community, I commonly see nostalgia being used as an excuse for still loving books that we read in the distant past. One of the most common ones you see all over YouTube and just all over the world in general is people's love for Harry Potter. When people claim Harry Potter is one of their favorite books, it's rarely just stated like that. It's usually, I love Harry Potter because I am so nostalgic for it from my past. And it's not even just that book we do it with. I do it with Wheel of Time all the time. I say, well, I'm really nostalgic for Wheel of Time because it was the first adult fantasy I ever read. And I don't know why, I was just thinking about this a lot, and I kind of had this thought about how do we always have to conflate a good first reading experience with the term nostalgia? In other words, why can't a really amazing first reading experience be just as a valid reason to like a book as anything else you might say about a book, such as good plot or characterization or writing skill or anything else of that nature? So if we read a book at the right stage of our life or the right age or whatever it was, can't we just say that that experience was a valid experience when it was? That first reading experience means something, and it's not just nostalgia that makes us like it. Look, our favorite books, they're never going to be perfect. They're always going to have flaws, and eventually valid criticisms will be leveled at this book, or maybe we will see flaws in the book on another read through that we didn't see the first time through. And I have to wonder if the idea of accepting that all of our favorite books have flaws is the first step in not apologizing for them being our favorites. Now, this comes from someone who apologizes for their favorites all the time. You know, we only talk about nostalgia when it comes to books we read in the past that we liked and we still like now. We rarely use that term for a book we read now and it's not as great. We usually read a book from our past and we're like, wow, this is still amazing, but I'm gonna blame it on nostalgia. That's why I like it so much. It's not just because maybe it is a good book. As two different scholarly articles put it, critique of nostalgia has tended to be hostile and dismissive, associating the phenomenon with dominant and conservative forces in society. And as both are understood in our century, nostalgia can seem antithetical to critical thinking. Honestly, both of these represent the feelings I have had about nostalgia, and I find that so fascinating. It's just a topic I want to think about. Why do we feel like nostalgia is the antithesis of critical thinking? This is definitely one of those videos where I don't have the answers. It's just kind of a topic I want to explore. Now, that second article I mentioned, which specifically focused on poetry, goes on to say this. This paper argues for nostalgia as integral rather than detrimental to reading. So the question is, can we start thinking about our first reading experience with a book being just as valid of a criticism or a love critique as anything else? Like, why do we always have to dismiss that first reading experience as not valid? Now, certainly it is not necessarily an objective view of the book, and I've talked a lot about objectivity and subjectivity in past videos, but it could be a very clear subjective measure of a book. I don't think we should automatically just say, well, it's just nostalgia. That first reading experience, I think, is valid and does attest to maybe how good a book is. We tend to think of our youth as a time that we were maybe very colored by books books, or maybe we feel like our taste wasn't as good, which is why we have to blame nostalgia. But really, we could read a book at any age in our lives that just hit at the right time, the right themes, and the right moment. That's never gonna change once we grow up. Nathaniel Steen, in an article for The New Yorker, talks about this phenomenon a little bit, and he talks about how people would never question looking at an amazing painting more than once, or even viewing a favorite film over and over and over again. But somehow when people reread books a lot, there is some sort of question there about why they would do it. And this may be because it takes much more of a time commitment, but I found this kind of relatability there with nobody apologizes for paintings they've loved in the past. I've never said, I used to love this painting, I'm just nostalgic. I just say like, I love this painting. And the same with some of my favorite films. You know, I saw Ocean's 11 when I was 11 years old, and I never apologize for it. I still say, yeah, I love the movie Ocean's 11. It's great. I don't have to say, well, I'm nostalgic because I saw it when I was 11. So why do we do that with books? Now, in fairness, I am very a part of the book community, whereas I am not a part of the film or art community. So perhaps this is a more common thing when you are really entrenched in a community. Maybe there would be paintings you'd be embarrassed to like, or films you'd be embarrassed to like, and you'd have to blame nostalgia. That would be very interesting. If you're a part of another community like that, let me know. But as far as my community and the book community, I just don't see things as much. It feels like we are much harsher on our books, as if we need to prove something or apologize for things we've liked previously. I was also thinking of this topic in regards to Piranesi. I talked about this a little bit in my favorite books video, but sometimes I have a hard time, I'm afraid to tell people Piranesi is one of my favorite books of all time because I've only read it once. And I realize that that is me disregarding this amazing first reading experience. I feel like if I haven't read it 2 or 3 times, I can't quantifiably say it was a good book. Again, why am I discounting that first read through as if it doesn't count somehow, as if a first experience with a book isn't as valid as anything else we use to critique it? Now, this isn't to say nostalgia doesn't play into our favorite books or that we should discount it completely, but I wonder if we don't need to be as negative about it or embarrassed about it as we currently are. Anyway, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts about this. I really love bringing ideas and thoughts to you before they're fully formed. I haven't, formed a definitive opinion on this. It's just something I've been thinking about a lot with nostalgia in regards to our favorite books and how we view them and how it plays into it. So I'd be very curious to hear your guys' opinion on kind of this, and if you think, the time period in which you read it should be a big factor in whether or not you're allowed to like a book without apologizing for it. I want to end on a definition of nostalgia I found that was written by Michael Chabon in an article for The New Yorker. Nostalgia, to me, is not the emotion that follows a longing for something you lost, or for something you never had to begin with, or that never really existed at all. Nostalgia, most truly and most meaningfully, is the emotional experience, always momentary, always fragile, of having what you lost or never had, of seeing what you missed seeing, of meeting the people you missed knowing. It's the feeling that overcomes you when some minor vanished beauty of the world is momentarily restored. In that moment, you are connected. Thanks for watching. If you like these kind of videos, please like and subscribe. Or if you want to see what I'm currently reading, you can check me out on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. I'll see you next time. Bye.